Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us for our discussion panel based on AI, with the title being The True Beneficiaries of AI Adoption Around the World. We're going to hear from a lot of great speakers today who are experts in the field who spend a lot of time looking into what is AI doing for people around the world, for different countries. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our moderator for today, Mr. James Cusick, who is one of our Board of Trustees members here at the Henry George School. And yeah, James, take it away.
Thanks very much, Kuba. And yes, welcome to everyone to the Henry George School of Social Science in New York. Today's topic is really to explore how AI is progressing around the world. We initially kind of thought about a panel representing different countries, different regions. That's what we've done today, is to assemble that panel. And I'm glad to see that we have some folks joining from around the world. That's very much appropriate for this topic, and welcome to all of you. I want to start the conversation right away. However, unfortunately, I must begin with sharing some news that the president of our school, Susie Schuyler of Manhattan, passed away, unfortunately, this past weekend on March 8th. Susie was a dynamic leader, a fierce advocate for the ideals of Henry George, and a friend to all of us here, very well-known person in the community. And so we're going to miss her dearly. And out of respect for her, and as this is the first event that we're hosting since her passing, I would like to ask that we hold a brief moment of reflection, of silence, just before we continue with the agenda. Thank you for your understanding. And so let me just briefly outline the agenda and the theme again, and then I will introduce the speakers. So what we're going to do is each speaker will have an opening a statement, probably about 10 to 15 minutes or so. We have focused these opening statements just in a little bit different topic areas, but also emphasizing the regions or countries which they are representing today. The Following those opening statements, I prepared some questions for the panel so that we have something to talk about. And I imagine that they will want to bring up various other topics as well. And at the end of that, if you go to the chat, you can enter questions, and we'll try to address some of those as well towards the end of the program. Now, in terms of setting any kind of context, I really don't think I need to spend any time talking about AI. I mean, it's kind of difficult to find somebody who hasn't heard of AI. They may not be aware of all the particulars, but at least almost everyone now is aware of the topic. However, my point of view is that most of the news tends to be very U.S. focused. A lot of the innovation and the capital investment is, in the United States. I actually just today I attended a cybersecurity conference, industry conference here in Osaka, and almost everything was AI related. Although one layer down, it was nothing had changed. All the tools were the same, but they were all AI, and they were almost all of them coming out of the United States. So it was very interesting to me to see that. But today we'll take a look at what's going on in other countries. We even have participants today dialed in from these different countries, and so I think it should be pretty exciting. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to try to put this in the perspective of economics, and in particular, the view of Henry George. And maybe some of you may know a lot about Henry George, and others may not. So we're going to describe that a little bit to you today, and I hope that will be a helpful new angle for some of you. So let's get started. We have four very distinguished speakers today. I just want to let you know that one of them is traveling at the moment. As soon as he arrives at his location, he's planning to dial in. So hopefully that will happen at the end. So I'll put him at the end of the opening remarks. But I will go over the bios just a little bit. They're all on the web page, so they're quite extensive and they're very impressive. But I think it's worthwhile to just summarize them quickly. First, I'm going to introduce Alec Gevorkyan, and he is the chair of economics and the associate professor of economics at St. John's in New York. Alec is also a board member here at the Henry George School. And among other positions, Alec is the subject matter expert for the permanent observer mission of the Holy See to the United Nations. And his research topics include open economy, macroeconomics, economic development, diaspora economics, and post-socialist transition economies. He has published broadly in these areas and has a new book on Eastern European economics, which is available. Next to speak will be Professor Willi Semmler, who's currently in Berlin, joining us today. He is the Arnold Professor of International Cooperation and Development at the New School for Social Research in New York. Previously, he held several positions at American University, Bielefeld University, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, and in Germany, and he was also a Fulbright professor at the University of Vienna. Currently, he's also a member of the Center on Capitalism and Society at Columbia University. He is a research associate at La Sapienza in Rome, and a senior research associate at IIA SA in Vienna. So his work has focused on empirical macroeconomics, financial economics, and the economics of climate change. Willi is also a prolific author, and his research has appeared in publications from the World Bank, the IMF, ECB, and ILO. So he's very well known. Welcome to Willi, and Willi is also a board member here at Henry George. And then also I would like to welcome Tato Khundadze, is that the right way to pronounce it? You can help me later, who joins us today from Georgia. And Tato has a very interesting background. He is an AI and machine learning engineer. He is also a PhD candidate in economics at the New School. And his work focuses on applying machine learning to economic dynamics and decision making and policy modeling, which I find very interesting. Currently, he is leading development of AI-driven systems at the Ministry of Infrastructure of Georgia and designing AI platforms and LLM-based assistance to enhance data-informed decision-making across the national infrastructure. Tato also serves as the Associate Professor of Machine Learning at the British University in Georgia. So thank you for joining us today, Tato. It was great to have you. And finally, Professor Washizaki, who is, as I said, in transit at the moment, hopefully he'll be able to join us today, is a professor and associate dean of the Research Promotion Division at Waseda University in Tokyo. He is also a visiting professor at the National Institute of Informatics in Japan. Most recently, he served as the IEEE Computer Society president for 2025. Currently, he is the prior year president in 2026, which has certain duties globally. The IEEE is the largest engineering association in the world. His work has been in several different areas in AI patterns, the SWEBOC, which is the software engineering body of knowledge. That's all of the techniques and methods we use in software engineering. And also he is very interested in educational methods as well. And currently he also is leading a national program on IoT and AI education, which is called Smart SE. So that's the panel that we have for you today. Welcome to everyone, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join us and share your expertise. And so with that introduction, we can get started. And I'd like to ask Alec to kick things off, and then we will go from there. So Alec, if you like.
Okay. Thank you, James. Welcome, everyone. And James, thank you for informing everyone and pausing to remember our president of our board, Susie Schuyler. She was a true engine and true motivator, right, for all of us. And she brought me into the school and was always supportive in all of our work and encouraging. So she will be really missed. But she would want us to continue and in strong spirit to try to sort of sustain the educational mission of the school. And so I will try to, as you said, kick things off. I'm in New York, so it's a little bit earlier for me than for everyone else, but I'll try to stay energetic as much as I can through my presentation. So my name is Aleksandr Gevorkyan. I'm a Henry George Chair in Economics at Tobin School, College of Business at St. John's, and I'm actually a full professor of economics there. The rest of the intro was fine. My general interest is in the topics of economic development, and I throw a lot of things into that because I'm more of a macro sort of person, so everything is connected for me. I'm also privileged and I guess I'm not sure what the right word to describe it, but I'm jumping ahead of my dissertation advisor, Dr. Willi Semmler, to whom I owe this ability to be able to speak to you today. This was many, many years ago, but it was Willi who supported my interest in looking into the economics of what I call now post-socialist economies, so Eastern Europe and former Soviet Union. And hence is my sort of part of my presentation will reflect on that. So let me switch. I have a few pictures to show, let's see if sort of how this goes. Okay, so the true beneficiaries of AI adoption. But first, what about Henry George? For those who may not know, Henry George was a relatively well-known statesman, political economist back in the late 19th century. He is more widely known for his influential book, Progress and Poverty. The ideas of the book, which I will mention in a moment, captured imagination not just of his contemporaries and people around him, but also for generations later. If I'm correct, but I would like others to add to that maybe later. But people like Leo Tolstoy to Winston Churchill all admired or somehow were encouraged by his thoughts. So what was it? The principal there were a lot of ideas, but the principal main idea was, of course, about land value, right? The fact that what matters really is what takes place on a certain plot of land. And because of whatever economic activity takes place on that parcel of land, it has a certain value. And that's the value that should be taxed, not income, not I don't know, added value, or it's just based on the value of the output produced on that land. So that's what determines the value of the land. So these ideas, you can imagine, are even if they're somewhat naive for some people, but they're actually very powerful, especially in our times. And the way he arrived to these conclusions or these proposals was through observations, right? He traveled a lot and he commented a lot in his writings on the socioeconomic conditions of the country at that time. And hence the title of the book, Progress and Poverty, because on the one hand, there is this massive industrialization. On the other hand, a large share of the population lived in poverty. And partially my presentation will reflect on that. I will touch on the problem of inequality, because that is something that still persists today. And but that's a separate lecture. I have a few points here, bullet points, but that's probably what I just talked about probably is captured here. So let me move on. And if there are any questions, we can always come back and talk a little bit more about that. So AI or automation, the moment you mentioned that, it sort of sets a different mood in the room, and everyone becomes super pensive and trying to say something that is original. Well, look, we're not really original. Back in the early 20th century, people were imagining what the late 90s or early 2000s would look like. So here's just one picture. Maybe some of you have seen this. It's a series of these sort of postcards where AI or automation, I'm going to be using them interchangeably, but of course there's an important difference, but for now, interchangeably. But whereas this automation enters as something that is sort of labor augmenting, right? And it helps in achieve greater efficiency, in this case, in the barbershop. So there's that view that essentially automation and with that AI will just be helping us through our lives. There's the other view, and that's the sort of over controlling. And there's a lot of, I mean, Hollywood is great in predicting the future, by the way. So you should rewatch all the movies from the 90s to understand what's happening now. But that's essentially one of the other extreme scenarios. Will the robots be controlling all our activities? Will we be sort of everyone put out of work because automation is pushing forward and AI is writing, even these days, there's a way to write academic papers and that look almost like written by humans, so why bother, right? Well, the thing is, there's no clearly defined answer yet. There's a lot of speculation. There are a lot of different scenarios, but that's pretty much it. There are, though, some things that are actually more concrete. One of those is the resistance to automation and being substituted by a robot or AI type of algorithm, right? Of course, in economic history, this goes back to the ideas of the Luddite movement and the whole resistance to introduction of new textile equipment and so on in Britain. Interestingly, that uprising was put down, but some of the general conclusions that may be relevant for us could be the following, right? Over sort of economic history shows an increase in productivity, and as productivity rises, there's less demand for in certain areas of in human labor, right? In human resources. This doesn't mean that workers become completely obsolete. In the long run, there's a transition into other areas, and examples are plenty. And any other article you read about AI adoption will talk about how there didn't used to be a job for Instagram influencers. Well, now it's a real full-time position, and so on and so on. that's fine. But the real important point here is that this takes time, right? So this takes time, and before we arrive to that transition, something else happens, and that's where Keynes would remind us that there's something about the short run. And I mean, on the one hand, we live in the short run. On the other, and because of that, we need to understand all of the sort of the political economy sort of implications of, in this case, technological progress, because we should also consider AI adoption and automation as part of a larger technological progress and technological change. So there may be negative distributional effects, and that's really one. I mean, I'll talk about a couple of country cases, but really the main interest for me right now is the distributional impact of that, and how we think about AI and connected with that economic inequality is really defined sort of how we see that, right? If we see inequality in general, economic inequality, to be skills based, right? Then there's not much that we can do, because unless we specialize in these special areas, right? Gaining new skills and everyone learning how to code to simplify a very complex thing. There will be that sort of difference, right? Those who are in those prime sectors, in industrial sectors, will be earning higher returns compared to everyone else. But there also is another part of it, and that's the policy side of inequality. And this is where it's not just introducing one tax that saves everyone or redistributes, although that is important. There are a lot of talks about, let's say, global wealth tax, for example, right? But it is also about the role of, I guess I would use the phrase industrial policy, right? What the regulator, the government, does in terms of promoting competition and avoiding sort of monopolization of specific areas. Or at the same time, thinking about the type of incentives that government provides to the sectors and on what conditions, if any. So these two sort of aspects of AI adoption are interconnected, at least in my mind, the skills-based and the economic policy decisions, where the government really have much to say. And it doesn't really matter if it's a large economy or a small economy. By the very fact that this is something that is within the domain of the regulatory domain of government, right? Then both small and large economy can actually enact certain policies. Now, before I run all the way ahead, let's just remind everyone that these are not my ideas. This is what Adam Smith said. And so to be heard, you always have to quote Adam Smith. But in Wealth of Nations, he talks about sort of preventing monopolization of sectors and so on. But now, because of the limited time, and I have a few more things to say, I have to now transition out of this sort of conceptual discussion into something that's more on concrete and a little bit more, I guess, applied. So I was asked to talk about Armenia, a country in the Caucasus, and my colleague Tato will talk about the other country in the Caucasus, Georgia. Both fascinating places you should visit. You should spend some time, and 1 week for one, 1 week for the other. I mean, if you need any pointers where to go, let us know. So in Armenia, there's been a massive growth in terms of technological sector, the ICT, I guess, sector, over the past 15 to 20 years, roughly. As a share of sort of GDP, right, that value added of the sector, this has grown from roughly 3 to 6%. And that's significant given how tiny the country is and sort of in general, the resources that are available over there, right? But what is emerging is this culture of tech startups that are globally competitive, and I will mention some examples in a couple of slides later, There's a lot in terms of sort of broader AI infrastructure and cooperation with companies, including very large, established, well-known companies across the world. What is also interesting is that development of tech sector has entered into the educational pipeline, right, into educational system. And again, I'll bring up a picture and talk about that very briefly. Another important point is that the government does support, and this is where I will talk about, well, what does this support mean in terms of the broader macroeconomic development? One catch for Armenia is that a lot of this initial start, a lot of the initial push in terms of this development actually comes from the diaspora. And hence actually my interest in researching diaspora economics, because I was trying to understand, well, what's going on, right? And it's not as linear as some might think. Let me dazzle you with something else here, and that is recently announced cooperation between Firebird and NVIDIA. It started with 500 million announcement, and then recently was upgraded to $4 billion dollar project, building, I guess, manufacturing facility and processing data centers in Armenia. So this is a massive win for the country, but also a reflection on apparently its very strong backbone in terms of the individual corporations. So this is just a, I guess, word cloud, right? Of different companies. Of course, we recognize some of the global leaders like Microsoft here, right, at MAN or NVIDIA, but there are also Armenia-based entities. For example, I'll just highlight a couple of these. For example, there's CRISP. Well, Zoom now offers noise cancellation, but before Zoom was able to develop that, CRISP was the first and was really a global leader in that. And their newest project right now is accent elimination, essentially, and all other types of support sort of through for communications. There is another company, PixArt, which is very popular across the world among graphic designers and people like that, and professionals like that, right, and groups like that. There are others which I don't know much about, but cannot talk more confidently as such. But there's, for example, FAST, right, which is a foundation, and all of these involve at least some partial participation of the diaspora investors, so Armenians living abroad. But FAST also has educational programs, and they engage the youth, and there's sort of after-school programs and so on. Similar is Tumo, which has become now a global brand. So you will see Tumo in Paris, you will see Tumo in, I think, Argentina, and so on. And this is, again, the tech sort of center where primarily aimed for teenagers to experiment and build their own robots and see what happens. So it's a broad sort of sector with very different areas of specialization, from chip designs to software development to fintech and AI education, but also outsourcing. And that really was one of the larger sort of components in terms of supporting companies across the world and in the West. So you have kind of this type of cooperation, and part of it is explained both by the level of technical education that has been inherited since the Soviet times in Armenia, but also the fact that sort of there's the multilingual aspects of the workforce and so on, right? So there's a lot. This is another way to show this, maybe if a bit more intuitive as a diagram, but I'll not spend too much time on this. But essentially, you have now two entities. If in the past diaspora played the most determinant role in terms of starting this whole and building this entire ecosystem. Now you have local venture capital companies that actually go out there and fund projects, right? The startup aspect of this is very important. So I mentioned some of these companies like Crisp and so on. And then the larger companies and this newest corporation tends to provide the technical infrastructure for all of this. And then, of course, there's the training or educational pipeline that comes through universities and specialized groups like TUMO, which again, look this up and you'll be really impressed by what it is. Supporting all this is a long term, it's not new, it's been in place, again, as I said, 15, 20 years, government support for tech development. And it's been modified in many different ways, but essentially the idea of tech incubators goes back to those years. There are also various other incentives, like economic incentives, and that's the part I will talk about in a second. Let me try to move forward. And maybe I'll skip this because I already talked about this. And this is better illustrated with these charts. So what's happening in terms of the incentives is that there are various types of either subsidized loans or tax incentives and so on. And naturally, what is happening for us as, let's say, macroeconomists, we understand that what is happening is the accumulation of the gains at the top, right? There are few sort of firms, and in terms of employment, the ICT sector is small. So what's shown on these charts is the average salary, right? Average monthly salary in the IT sector. It doesn't matter what the figures are, just look at the difference in colors and sizes, right? So it's massive compared to the rest of the economy. But at the same time, it employs roughly 4% of the total employed, right? And so much of the employment is in the sort of retail trade and education and things like that. So more of a traditional sectors. This creates this disparity, right? And that's why I talked about inequality. This creates disparity within the society, within the economy, and may seem as an unsustainable trend. So technically, I'm supposed to be praising things, but being realist, this may lead to an unsustainable trend where much of the output, right, and value created in the ICT sector, because of its connection and with an export-oriented sort of position and connection with the rest, with the global economy, doesn't sort of filter through into the local economy, and that's a bit of a problem. So this is where, going back to the government's credit, so there's an attempt to engage these startup firms and other tech organizations in developing applications for the domestic economy. And this is where the educational programs are so much important. And there's really a lot that is being done. Because, again, my interest is not just Armenia, but general post-socialist and specifically small countries. And Armenia, Georgia are those that are my favorite. We see a similar picture in Georgia, and Tato will correct me if this is not the case, but essentially, again, a highest income group, but in terms of employment, one of the lowest. So I'd like to conclude now because I don't know how much time I've already taken. But I don't hope it's not 40 minutes because that's what it's showing on me. But the last point really is this. Whether it's AI or automation or Armenia, Georgia, United States, whichever country, there are three pillars in terms of how we can assess that progress in general. Number one, we need to understand whether or not this new development is leading towards a competitive structure within the economy. Right? It's great that there's a lot of export activity, but how does this help the local economy? What are the conditions for an average person in that local economy? Right. Second, there's institutional change, right? And here we need to understand that technology goes develops way faster than legislation and regulation and the norms. So we need to do something about that as well, and somehow sort of stay on the same pace. And lastly, going back to the point I just mentioned, it's the basic sort of feeling in terms of living in this economy. Do I have a chance to move up? And that's when, if these points are addressed, that's when the fears of AI and automation can either be, amplified or pacified, right? Because if we have like through the educational programs that engage an overwhelming majority of young people in learning about technology from many different ways. It's not just coding. There's sort of a lot of experimentation. That perhaps gives some hope in terms of that, okay, there is a career in that, and I can actually I don't have to immigrate. And that's another topic, but essentially there's a push factor, right, for a lot of small countries in terms of brain drain.
So Alex, yeah,
I'm
don't
done.
interrupt, but yeah, I just wanted to kind of help you get to the end there. I think this is
That was
great.
my essentially the last point.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So
So
this
I
is
tried.
really good. Yeah, it's really good because I think it sets up a nice framework for the rest of the panel, and I really appreciate your doing that. Thank you so much.
Of
And I
course. Thank
also
you.
noted that Professor Washizaki joined, so we will have a chance to listen to him as well, which is great. Thank you. So the next speaker is Willi, Professor Semmler. So would you like to share your thoughts with us? Thanks, Alec.
All right. Thank you very much for the invitation here. James and Kuba did an incredible job to get some global views on the diffusion of AI around the globe. And so I will now add some remarks from point of view of Europe and Germany. And these are somewhat advanced countries, what are called, the other ones are called the developing countries. So there is quite a difference in the probably diffusion and origin of AI dynamics in these two regions. And I want to focus now. Okay, what's this? Okay, yeah. I want to focus on the given task by James, namely AI innovation and macroeconomics. Now, Alec connected already the innovation to income and distribution in the society with respect to jobs and income and wealth. There is another strand, of course, that is innovation and jobs and unemployment that started with Ricardo, a machinery chapter. Machines are substitute for labor. And so there's a threat of, so to speak, more persistent unemployment. Is there one or not? So this is a second important dimension, I think, in innovation development and theory. And I want to speak about now AI as related to other innovation waves that one had since the 19th century, at least in European countries. I call it an innovation wave because one doesn't know, so to speak, does it have a temporary effect, so to speak, have a boom and then a bust, but on the whole, the effect will taper out and you will have other waves coming. So this is, so to speak, the theory of innovation cycles that Schumpeter has developed in the 1930s already, 1939. And my intention is to show or to discuss this problem. Is this IA actually, so to speak, a cycle in the sense that it has its time period, so on the horizontal x, 25, 30, 40 years, or is that something that has permanent effects? You see, that is a big question in the discussion about AI. So we had these earlier time periods, there were innovation cycles, energy cycles. So from water and steam power to electricity, nuclear later, then renewables. But then a lot of these new energies was related to motorization of industrial production, also automatization, what Alec was talking about, transport, and so on. This was another important wave of industrial societies or advanced society, particularly in the US. This whole automatization and car production and motorization of the industrial activities and transport. And then came that is since the 1920s, then came the computerization and information. So the information technology since the 1990s was a new wave of innovations, and there was a boom, an increase in productivity and output and stock market booms until the crash 2000, beginning of 2000. And now AI has two components, so to speak. One is a cognitive process that will revolutionize science and the application. And the other is a combination of robotics and AI that probably James knows more about this than I do. So he can add probably that. So if you look at the earlier cycles, so to speak, you can see that if you're horizontal, you have so the degree of technological maturity, so to speak, and then you have this spread over time, but you have kind of logistic curve, as you can see here. So at the beginning, for most of the innovations, they work with these, so to speak, cycles that you have, great ideas. You have come from different eras of engineering and mathematics. You have some innovation, some ideas and some implementation of this, and then some innovations start, and the innovations start spreading, so to speak, and they start going up in the sectors that are developed, but then also spreading over the sectors. And you have basically four phases: early new takeoff of innovations, then rapid increase phase here, and then a full expansion, and then it's tapering off the innovation. At the same time as you have these innovations, you have these distributional problems. At the beginning, you have these skill problems with labor, so demand and supply of skills, and you have these income distribution and wealth problems along those lines, so to speak. And Alex prepared very well, so to speak, what the classical political economy already was thinking about this. So now this is the usual, so to speak, development of innovations that can be think about, like agriculture. You have a new technology, some farmers have that, and after a while some more farmers will have that, and then you have this diffusion to all the farmers in the agricultural sector, and that may spread to other sectors and so on. So it will be internal to the sector, and it will spread to other sectors. And this is roughly, so the problem that one might see, does it taper off, or is it persistent, so to speak? If you think about this, so to speak, log of an exponential curve here, then it's a straight line. So it may still be exponential going up, the new AI revolution. In other words, it may go up, and other people like Kurzweil from Stanford and so claiming that in fact it will go up exponentially because of the current computing power. So this is a little bit, so to speak, the difference to old innovation cycles. Let me go now to the other issues that was raised by also Alec and James, namely to what effect. Well, two issues. One is the opportunity and, so to speak, capacity building for like income, output, employment, productivity, so from the macroeconomic point of view that is important. And the other one will be, well, the perils and the dangers that might come with that. So I will talk about these 2 points now. The first is, so to speak, the opportunities and the capacity building, and if you want, the benefits from AI. And in general, but also I will talk about EU and Germany there, so the advanced countries there. So the forerunner basically in the science was already in mathematics and in theory of dynamic programming and neural nets and cluster theory and statistics and econometrics and machine learning and reinforcement learning and MLPC. These are basically computational methods or algorithms that can be developed and can be applied. Now, Germans were not too bad of that, because it was one of the first one who basically was a forerunner for the binary system that is used in algorithms now, was Leibniz, 1670 something. And actually, whenever you get to Hanover, you should go to the Leibniz Museum in Hanover, where you can see his calculating machines that work with binary principles, and he developed these calculation machines already there, and it's exhibited there. But now AI is mainly, so to speak, dominant in the cognitive area, so as LLM, and is spreading a lot across sectors in Germany, as also Alec demonstrated for Armenia there. So it's in manufacturing, agriculture, services, climate risk, ecological environment, finance, health, firms, households, and public administration. So this AI in terms of LLM, so as cognitive machinery, so to speak, is spreading also in Germany and a lot in many sectors there already. And this is happening not only in Germany, but also in Europe. But now, let me characterize what is spreading there and what is developed. Germany and Europe are mostly the second mover. So they have a very great engineering base, a very great also vocational training, education. They have middle level of transmission machinery, so to speak, of Max Planck Institute, universities, engineering schools, Fraunhofer Institute, human capital formation. So is rolling, so to speak, through a lot of help of these middle institutes that produce some engineering knowledge. But the Germany have no impact on the fundamental research, so to speak, of the AI development. You know, the big 5, 6 American platform firms are dominating, and there are no European corporations of that size. So what coming to probably also to Armenia and Georgia are big American firms, probably. So, but they are a very, very good second mover, as Asia was the second mover for developed technology for consumer good production, so to speak, like Korea or Southeast Asia or China in earlier times. So Germany is a good second mover in the application of this, what is developing. That's my impression. And I have a lot of communication with those institutes there. And they are very heavy in supporting this financially and helping the transmission, so to speak, from knowledge to industry application. Yeah, that's, I think, important. Therefore, I call this second mover, but not the fundamental mover, in spite of the fact that Germany had a great science tradition in the 19th century, and a lot of probability theories, so Hilbert and others come from the 19th century, was developed later than used in Russia or US. But at the moment, they're the second mover, so to speak. Now, the AI application in these sectors above there predict usually output growth, productivity growth, employment maybe, but income growth. Roughly, the estimate is the growth rate might rise by 0.3% or so, 0.5% over medium term in the German or European economies. But at the moment, you don't see much. And there can be applied the statement by Robert Solow, when he saw this digital and information technology rising. He said, well, information technology shows up everywhere except in the data. So it's hard to measure their reviews or surveys, how much the personnel in industries and big firms are applying this. But there is a big disparity between the big firms applying this now and the small firms. As you probably remember, the German engineering economy is basically a family type economy. So there are family type firms, not with big corporations listed in stock market, but very active family type engineers and innovative firms. And there is a big difference in the application of this in big firms and in small firms. Some of the organizations that I mentioned, for example, Fraunhofer Gesellschaft or Engineering School, actually work very hard to promote the small scale firms. In other words, the family type of enterprises. But there's also arising a big difference in demand and supply of skills and wage differences, as also Alec mentioned, and income and wealth differences. And the prediction is that due to the difference in demand and supply of skills and the gains of the big firms of AI application, the capital share will rise and the labor share will fall. So this is one of the predictions that is roughly along the lines that Alec has also mentioned. Let me get to, so the last point. Now, there is an old discussion already about the benefits and gains or losses from innovations. What I said, Adam Smith about income and wealth distribution, and Ricardo about machinery and rise of unemployment due to the development of machinery. And we have studied this historically, so to speak, what's the effect of these new technology waves or cycles were. There's one paper with Puchen. We try to estimate what happens in the short run and what happens in the long run. We had huge data set from the 19th century, and you can see that any innovation waves that you had there in the short run, it really reduced employment, produced more unemployment, but in the long run, not. Because countries with high technological change also had some advantage in the long run, could have more investment, more expansion, more big firms, and employment was rising. So there's a difference between the short run and the long run of technological change. And this may be also true for the shorter run for the AI development. Second, the supply and demand of skills will change. And Alec has referred to that, namely the skill bias technical change. So if you have a skill not falling in demand, the price for this will fall and your wage will go down. If you have a skill rise for this skill or task with rising demand due to AI, the employment and wages will rise, but also the demand, so to speak, of the aggregate economy will rise of these skills, and therefore the skill, due to technical change, will produce a bigger disparity to the low skill. So the low skill, that means less educated, only people have high school degree or dropouts or no university degree. was an old discussion on skill bias technical change. The question is if that will also happen with AI, so in the short run. So in other words, in the short run, you have that effect. The long run, you may have this compensation effect that other skills are coming up and, so to speak, providing job opportunities. One thing is true that we have measured this over many cycles in the US, namely that there is some cyclical jobless growth. In other words, we're expecting now pretty soon a downturn, the US economy, European economies. When there is an upswing, there will not be a fast job growth because firms will demand different types of labor, have different types of labor already in the factories there, and you have growth, but you don't have growth of jobs. That's that we have estimated for several cycles for the US, and you can actually see that problem is increasing, jobless growth. But in the long run, so to speak, that may be compensated by other sectors and other activities. And that's why we study this problem with what's happening in the short run and long run. You need certain techniques for this, how you study this, but it can all be done. But what is true is actually the capital share will rise and labor share is likely to fall. That's true. There's also some new papers by Acemoglu and others who have shown this for skills and tasks, different tasks, the shifts there in the demand and supply of skills. There's one other worry that some other worries that are discussed, and possibly these are risk challenges or perils in the future. One is in the business cycle, up and down, there are two forces that are, so to speak, producing negative feedback effects. So when you are down in recession, usually you have unemployment, lower wage growth, opportunity for firms to hire cheap labor, to make better returns, so the stock market will rise. The second effect is this, that you have innovations are maturing over time, and the innovation will be implemented in the new upswing, and then the technology and new innovations will also produce a new upswing. These two forces may not work so easily if you have artificial intelligence. You see, you may have a positive feedback effect, namely that the use of labor is not so important anymore. You use machines. Secondly, the use of human capital is not so important anymore. You use machines. You see, you may have a degradation then that may produce, so to speak, permanent effects of having not this negative feedback effect. You may create positive feedback effects, so to speak, that produces this automatic upswing and not anymore. So that's my worry. Secondly, my worry is that there may be some overinvestment in data center and AI and US. You see this a lot. Most of the current investment rates are driven by AI investment in the US. In manufacturing, the investment rates are already going down. And so, therefore, what's happening there? People are saying, oh, well, they will create jobs and they will have returns. But if there's such a competition in AI, in application of AI, the old innovations are useless in some years already. So the firms have this huge investment outlays with borrowing. They have to repay back the loans. But then the debt will rise because they have not such a debt, a fraction of income will rise because they don't have this income flow, because they have to, so to speak, amortize or get their capital back in a very quick time period, which they will not. And therefore, my worry is there is overinvestment that may be crashing at some time. There's big debates among the economists and financial economists to what extent there is an overinvestment. There is another problem, what I said, well, there's a rising disparities of firm size or firm application of that, and rising disparity of income and wealth disparities. And this was actually the major point of Henry George in his book on progress and poverty. Well, there was a huge progress in the US economy in the 19th century, but there was also at the same time a huge increase of poverty and inequality. And so that was basically one of the important points of also Henry George. So that could come up again, particularly between regions and countries or skill groups or fractions of labor also.
Thank you, Willi. That's a really good point to end on. Bringing in Henry George again. Is there anything else quickly that you wanted to say before we go
just
over to
1 minute more. 1 minute more. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the AI, of course, have produced some other perils that you already know. There are regulations against this, what you should not use AI for, like surveillance of the people in the EU. But it's increasingly used also for bad purposes for military. And there it's uncontrollable. So, and then in the long run, there is the Kurzweil in Harari and others saying, well, there will be some merger of biological intelligence and machine intelligence, and human capital will actually depreciate and will not be worth much more. So what the suggestion is now that I have at the end, what is necessary, not only regulation by state and of institutions of research of application and so, but that there is also some, so to speak, labor participants in the corporate governance. That's the German system, so to speak. They participate in the German decision-making on the corporate level, and then they can control also a little bit more. So here is a productivity increase due to individual use of AI, but then also labor should participate in the productivity increase. And this is one of the German principles of trade union. They have wage increase for anticipating inflation rate and productivity increase. So that's one way that should be done in the corporate governance. So we actually, there is a paper on it. Kuba can point out at the Henry George School, a paper on this. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, I ran over a little bit.
No, that's fine, Willi. We really appreciate it, and thank you for all your insights and perspectives. They were very helpful. So I'm going to turn it over to Tato now. Tato, and maybe you can try to keep your remarks around 10 minutes if it's possible, because we also want to hear from Washizaki Sensei, who made some effort to join us today on the road. So why don't you go ahead?
Thank you again. And so my presentation will be a little bit technical, and so I will try to make it as less boring as possible. So I will talk about the specific project, so what we are doing now in Georgia, specifically at the Ministry of Infrastructure, and the dashboard we're building and how AI is integrated in the ministry planning. But before doing so, I just also want to show you one statistics about the AI usage, which can be actually used as a proxy for AI usage. This comes from the Anthropic Economic Index, which shows the ranking for Georgia. And as we see, actually for Georgia, it's like ranks 20 among 116 countries sample. And actually, if we look at it geographically, also we see that Georgia ranks quite well if we compare to other countries in the region, let's say Armenia and Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan ranks like it's bottom 25%, and Armenia is a little bit up, but less than Georgia. And it's kind of interesting to see this, because if we compare it to other countries as well, we see that comparatively Georgia ranks more, like higher in this anthropic index than, let's say, Finland. And it's quite fascinating actually to see and observe. And if you have any other question regarding that, I will be happy to answer. But I will start and I will continue with a bit theoretical remark from Friedrich Hayek, from his essay on the use of knowledge in society. And the central argument of his is that the planners fail because relevant knowledge is dispersed across individuals and it's shaped by local circumstances, and there is no kind of integrated form of knowledge. But with the kind of generation and with the development generative AI, this changes because the AI and specifically the generative artificial intelligence makes this knowledge partially integrated, this dispersed knowledge. And let me tell you the story how we do it in Georgia and how we integrate in the planning system in the government AI, specifically in Ministry of Infrastructure. So what is the problem and what was the problem we were trying to solve? The problem was the tracking of the already financed projects, government-funded projects, infrastructural projects. And what we had before, it was the Excel spreadsheets. There was no central integrated system. And this was very difficult to track. Usually it was tracked through emails, and sometimes numbers change, sometimes numbers get lost, and it brought a huge level of kind of frustration among decision makers. And in addition to that, there was a zero visibility to the minister. For instance, if the minister asked for the specific project, and we even had a kind of an experiment, how much time it will take to get the specific info on the specific projects, it was kind of sometimes 3 days, sometimes a week, and sometimes it even exceeded the 1 week. So what we did, we built a ministry dashboard, and I will show you the demo of this, which we had on the cloud, not the actual ones, but the demo version. But we built this, the big dashboard, which integrates 64 API endpoints. We have databases models and around 20 AI functions and 200 users. And this is a kind of a structure, the simplified structure, how it works. So PM in this case means the project manager. The project manager who is in charge of the specific project from the ministry, it's a government employee, who initiates a bills of quantities. It's a BOQ. It's a specific document which integrates the specific items of each project. And then system generates a Form 2, which the Form 2 is basically a progress report for each project. So for instance, if there is a specific progress, then the contractor, the company who fulfills the specific project, they write down, they fill out this Form 2, and then this Form 2 as a progress report then is uploaded in the system. And once it's uploaded in the system, project manager, the government employee, approves or rejects it, and then the dashboard is updated. So the dashboard then shows the progress of the project, etc. So how AI is integrated into this? So we have a chatbot integrated from the cloud, the Vertex AI. And basically it's a Gemini 2. Not the 2.0, but 2.5 now. And if you ask this question, then through developed functions, we have a multiple agents integrated into this. And some of them are responsible for the translation of the prompt. Some of them are responsible for the query from the databases, from the SQL databases. And some of them are responsible for fine-tuning the answer. And finally, it's kind of shown in the chatbot. The answer comes into the chatbot as a response. And the architecture works for the chatbot in the following way. So user asks the question within the dashboard, and as I promised, I will show this dashboard later. And then we have 20 different tools which process this information. And then this information comes, of course, from the database, the SQL database. Then the structured JSON returned the answer to Gemini. And then the Gemini different agents, which I mentioned, are processing this information, fine-tuning, and giving back to the author or to the question of this question. And let me give you an example, type of example of the question which may be asked. For instance, compare the Tbilisi bypass to the Kutaisi ring road. And it's quite simplified what I'm showing now, but this is actually resolved in the following way. So the AI extracts this information, Tbilisi bypass, and we have a specific function developed, and it's actually shown from the backend, the get project detail, and then from the Kutaisi. And then this fetches comparison data, our agent. And then finally, we get the synthesized data formatted as a table. So there are other tools which we integrated there. These are, and some of them are under development. These are the anomaly detection and the deadline early warning for the different projects. For instance, our generative AI system predicts the overruns if there is if there is some problem with regards to progress to time ratio. We have also under development the document analysis system, so that it's not only reads one specific document, but also cross-references them from one project, and also the daily briefing for different decision makers. For instance, for the minister, regarding the pending reviews, risk changes, milestones for the different type of projects. Of course, all this comes with different sorts of challenges. For instance, what we do is that single project manager approves each progress form too, but what the ministry employees want to have is that why not we involve some finance department for the review. There is also some other questions, and their diffusion of responsibility, and we have, of course, some pushback from the bureaucracy, but it's quite expected. And what is our approach in this regards? Because there is some fear among ministry employees that, for instance, one of the questions we may get is that given here the AI can answer the minister's question in 10 seconds, I used to spend 2 days preparing the report. What is my role now? And for instance, there were specific departments maybe to answer specific sort of questions, but now AI is doing like in 10 seconds. And this is a problem, of course, in terms of fear. And Alec mentioned the question of Luditz and Willi as well. So what is our approach? So we want to tackle at least partially, this problem through introduction of AI fluency trainings, so that this is kind of the approach from the ministry employees change, that they now perceive it not as a kind of competitor or as a kind of monitoring system, but as a personal assistant, so that they can do their job much faster than they did it before. There were also other challenges when we were doing this project, because we have different departments. We have 3 different departments: roads, water, and municipal development, and those have different sort of structures, different sort of regulations, and we were kind of trying to systematize the system. And the system which we built is kind of a component of larger ERP system. It's a kind of a separate component of it. So what are the key takeaways from my experience? This is one of the projects which I'm kind of describing. I'm also doing some others, but from the development of this specific project, I learned that there is a low technical barrier in terms of the use and the kind of deployment of AI systems in developing countries. Cloud services are not as high as I could imagine, and API systems make production systems accessible in general. And usually real barriers, what we so much kind of what we had so far was related to institutional problems. The problems of fear, which I already mentioned, the accountability resistance, so who are responsible for specific types of jobs and diffusion of responsibility, and also the problem of standardization. I mentioned that we had the three different departments, and so we had quite a big hurdles in this regard, how to standardize all these documents, and we still have kind of some problems with that. And then, of course, AI fluency training is not just a nice to have option, but it's important. It's important in kind of in tackling the problem of fear, which I mentioned before, so that the employees, the government employees, perceive it not as a threat, but as an assistant. And finally, to go back to the problem, the theoretical question, which I mentioned, of course, the AI, the generative AI, solves partially the knowledge problem, but so far it's not strong enough to fully fully solve this problem, and so that we can delegate fully all these tasks which we kind of did with our developers together. So we still need standardization. We still need the document system, etc., so that the AI gets the sort of information so that it has a lower level of hallucination afterwards, and so it gives less misleading answers. Otherwise, I think it works quite fine.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Tato, I really appreciate that
Finally, I just wanted to
Yeah.
show the demo version of the system. Unfortunately,
I think we can maybe maybe you can just pause on that, and we will kind of wrap it up here. Just for time, because I would like
can
to
I have a 30
give
seconds?
yeah, I would like to give the audience a chance to ask some questions. Otherwise, we're gonna run out of time here. So, but I really enjoyed the presentation, especially because you provided a nice concrete example. But I also really like your introduction of Hayek's thinking here and comparing that to where we are today. I hadn't thought of that, and it's a really nice model to consider. So thank you so much. But hold on, because we'll get back to you with some questions, and maybe we can, if we have time, we'll go back to the demo there. Now, if we have Washizaki-san available, maybe you can let us know what you would like to share with us today.
Sure. Thank you, James, and thank you for having me. And this is Hironori Washizaki, and please call me Hiro. And oh yeah, I find her here, so I just checked anyway. So anyway, so yeah, I try to keep keep my talk short. So I'm Hironori Washizaki, and I'm the professor working at Waseda University as full professor, but also associate dean research promotion division. But also I'm also working at the industry as director and also advisor at a couple of companies, mostly in IT and software. So today I'm very happy to introduce you the kind of share with you some kind of status of AI adoption, particularly generative AI adoption in Japan, and also compared with other countries and regions, particularly US and Germany. So let's move on. So firstly, as I said, I have been kind of happy to take the lead of the entire enterprise computer society. That is the world's largest professional organization in computing, and I'm extremely lucky to serve as president last year, and also this year I'm currently supporting the current president as immediate past president. So every year, Computer Society provides the technology predictions. So this is a kind of excerpt of the latest technology prediction report 2026. This is just released 2 months ago. So you can see 26 breakthrough technologies have been predicted, such as manufacturing and AI, medicine or AI personalities, multimodal AI, social AI, policy for AI, and so on. But you can be noticed that most of technologies are about AI, such as applied AI, and also verticals. Most of verticals are directly connected to AI, such as manufacturing and AI and medicine, and of course, agri-tech, AI, and the future of coding, future work, and so on. Okay, so yes, indeed, we envision that AI is a kind of very critical and infrastructure for almost any technologies and any regions and also any domains. So then the question is what is the reality, right? So maybe if I understand correctly, this panel is dedicated to what's the actual reality of the AI adoption right? Such as, for example, I do not represent Japan, but well, I'm from Japan, but also some other countries such as Georgia and so on. Okay, so with respect to Japan, there is one agency that is Information Technology Promotion Agency Japan. There's a kind of Japanese government agency, and every year that agency publishes the report, so-called Digital Transformation Trend 2025, and I have been somehow involved in some years, and so the survey results are based on the survey and analysis of digital transformation progress status in Japan, but also overseas. Particularly, you can see U.S. and also Germany for companies. And so here kind of very simple numbers of survey participating companies, such as more than 1,500 companies from Japan, more than 500 companies from US, and also more than 530 companies from Germany. From various domains such as manufacturing, retail, service, ICT, and also finance. Okay, then okay, so here's a kind of very simple comparison, how those companies are adopting particularly generative AI. Okay, so Japan. So here's the latest status of Japan, not 2025, but 2024, and also US 24, and also Germany 24. So in short, US leads the way in adopting generative AI, followed by Japan and Germany. So you see, U.S., many companies have already adopted already, okay, or many other companies are also in U.S., are doing some kind of trial use, and also followed by Japan and Germany, okay. Then, then what about the purpose or goal of use of or objective of use of generative AI? And such as very kind of limited use, such as trial use at the personal or department level, or personal business use, or integrated into department's business process, or integrated into company-wide services, or integrated into services provided externally. So from very personal level to very company-wide level. Okay, and then you see that Japan adoption of generative AI in Japan remains quite limited to trial use, you can see, and also personal business use. In contrast, in US and Germany, generative AI adoption is quite progressing at for example here department level, but also company-wide level. So then what's the reason and what are kind of challenges for in generative AI adoption? What are kind of obstacles? And so there are a couple of potential reasons such as failure to obtain management approval, difficulty of creating usage rules and standards, insufficient understanding of effects and risks of generative AI, hard to secure budget. Over reliance leads to declining in employee skills. Yes, indeed. If we, over, rely on the generative AI, then our skills will be, weakened and weakened, right? And also use of the potential, risk of use of, kind of incorrect output, and also risk of input information leakage, risk of copyright, problem, and also no suitable task for generative AI and other reasons. So here's the summary. So major challenges in Japan include the difficulty of assessing the effectiveness and risks of generative AI, as well as a tendency to avoid erroneous outputs. You can imagine that, many Japanese companies try to be perfect, okay? Try to, provide, almost perfect services without almost, zero defect, zero error. That's a kind of culture of Japanese companies. I do not say that U.S. companies and German companies providing services with defects. I don't say that, but that's a kind of culture, kind of tendency of Japanese companies. And in contrast, okay, so the companies in U.S. and Germany face challenges, including the failure of obtaining management approval and also over reliance. And also, unlike Japan, companies in U.S. and Germany are less averse, or in other words, less avoiding to the possibility of output errors. And in addition to the generative AI adoption, this report also covers data utilization. Okay, so what about data utilization in Japan? Okay, so there are two, they try to classify Japanese companies in two groups. One is kind of companies with good outcomes, and as companies with very poor outcomes, based on their, of course, survey responses. Okay. And then you can see that in Japan, the more successful a company is, then the more systematically it utilizes the data. So you can see that companies with good outcomes are adopting data utilization, kind of company-wide level or utilization at the department level. And meanwhile, companies with poor outcomes having, less company-wide utilization of data or, less utilization at the department level. Okay, so then finally, what about the country, by country, comparison, okay? Japan, US, and Germany. So you can see that, well, US is the most advanced in data utilization, followed by Japan and Germany. Okay. So okay, so then what we can do? Okay, for example, maybe kind of maybe a shortage of AI professionals or data scientists, right? Such as there are a lot of different roles in AI professionals, such as management with some understanding of AI business planner, AI researcher, AI system developer, data scientist, individuals capable of driving AI adoption, and also individuals capable of promoting data management. And then the kind of general trend is that at almost every level, US has the most AI professionals, followed by Germany. So that's really sad, but I would say Japan faces a kind of significant shortage of AI professionals. Maybe that's a reality. All right, so almost this is a conclusion. So with respect to generative AI adoption, so in US and Germany, generative AI adoption is progressing at the department and company-wide, and adoption of generative AI in Japan remains limited to trial use and personal business use. So we have to, Japan should, needs to, work on organizational deployment of AI adoption. And also challenges in generative AI adoption are somehow different, country by country. So major challenges in Japan includes the difficulty of assessing the effectiveness of the risks of generative AI, as well as the tendency to avoid erroneous outputs. So we need more appropriate, proper assessment of benefits and risk of AI adoption. What about AI professionals? Yes, Japan faces a thinker shortage. So we need more training and employment of AI professionals. And indeed, actually in Japan, and I'm reading a nationwide, AI and also IoT professionals, professional training program. And last but not least, data utilization. Okay, so we need to increase maturity of generative AI-based transformation holistically and gradually, such as not only data, but also AI, business process management, AI readiness, and so on. And so to satisfy such demand. Fortunately, in Japan, there are two companies releasing the recently so-called matrix or matrix, whatever, maturity assessment and AI transformation index, and I have been somehow involved in this. So those companies have jointly developed a maturity model to systematically assess an organization's generative AI utilization based on more than 1,000 generative AI use cases across 7 dimensions, such as business processes, integration, data governance, apply generative AI capability, of course, but also management, compliance, ethics, and last but not least, organizational readiness. So that's okay. So that's my kind of position talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hiro. Really appreciate that. I definitely understand the one chart you have where the Japanese companies are kind of reluctant without understanding the risks. That is very
Yeah.
culturally
Yeah.
specific, I think.
Right.
Most American companies, they study the risks, but they're willing to take the plunge, But yeah, Japanese companies tend to be a little bit more risk averse. So
Right. Right.
yeah,
Right.
great.
Yeah,
Well,
I
thank
think
you so much.
that could be, yeah, exactly, based on some, culture and also, kind of, societies or citizens, perception of technology and yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, great. Very good. Well, let's take a pause here for a second. We're just a few minutes beyond the time that I thought we would be able to finish up. So, what I'd like to do is for the panelists who can stay, let's take a few questions from the chat, and then let's see, how far we can get with that. I'm going to just refresh myself with some of the questions here. Let's see, the first question that came was, is there anything limiting the return to AI related capital? Is there any point at which the takings of capital owners may be considered unearned? And this is maybe for the whole panel. Maybe Alec, do you want to give that a try?
When I first saw the question, I understood it in one way. Now I'm reading it differently. So it is about returns as far as, let's say, profits. Anything limiting, it's not really. Sky is the limit in this case. I mean, anything limiting to the extent that we have what I talked about in this sort of the institutional basis, the institutional environment in which AI-related projects or capital is invested and operates. If there is sort of unconstrained, sort of, again, the government supports the contracts out with AI companies, supports the tech sector growth, and it is sort of unconstrained, then that's sort of, there's no limit to that return. Actually, now there's a second half to this second part to this answer to this question. But if a government has an idea for or a strategy, maybe it's a big word, but some idea for economic development strategy, and is concerned with the distributional aspects of tech sector growth, then probably there will be some limitation. The question is how to find the right balance so that you don't scare away investors. But the second part, I think, to this question, again, there may, at least in my interpretation, is more technical. And that is what Tato talked about and Hiro talked about in terms of the technical constraints in implementation, designing new projects, but also then adoption in terms of perceptions and such. But I think the technical part is more interesting to me because you can't really fight the stereotype. So to the point in terms of perceptions, you can't really fight. It takes time to work out the comfort of using AI and seeing it as a partner. But as far as the technical aspect of it, it's the applications. Because we can invent, it's just like in academics, in academic world, we can write really great, wonderful theoretical papers. But as Willi would have reminded us, if it has no practical use, then it probably there's something wrong with that theoretical paper. Theory for the sake of theory will take a long time to become relevant. And the same is with the invention. I think sort of the innovation process. Sort of if we continue inventing, that's great, but what is the practical application of that? So that may be the limitation.
And I think thank you very much for that. And I think also the other part of that question was hinting at more of like a Georgist flavor, right? So what is the unearned part of this AI revolution, right? Are they going to be taking rent, so to speak, from these platforms in some way that needs to be metered? And how do we see that?
Well, the most vocal response on this would come in this context would come from Mariana Mazzucato, right, where she talks about sort of private publicizing, sort of socializing the risk and publicizing and privatizing. Sorry, it's still too early for me. And privatizing the benefits, right? So when there's this massive, and I kind of hinted that in the case of Armenia, there's massive involvement in terms of educational support, research support, including financial, but the gains come to the sort of those who implement that, the private sector. And we have to hope that the distribution eventually works itself out. But initially, and that's what matters in the short run, there may be potential for that unearned portion.
Hiro, I don't know if you've really thought about this, but in Japan, how does the kind of private sector investment work with the government? Is it different than what we see like in the US?
Yeah, well, actually, is well, because in Japan, often the resources somehow limited, and also there, major other countries like US and also China, they are moving for just ultra large language model or something like that. So Japanese companies need to find out a little bit different solution, different areas, right? Yeah, for example, one typical successful case is I know the company Sakana AI. Maybe Jameson, you might know that. Sakana AI is a kind of spin-off, from Google, experts that they do not make a ultra large, super large large language model, but instead of that, a collection of small, AI models, and then try to address a kind of very domain specific knowledge and solutions. I think that's a kind of potential solution to not kind of one fit all large AI model solution, but very specific small solutions dedicated to some specific domain, specific area, specific problem. And I think many Japanese companies are trying to uh, move such towards such direction rather than having large one-fit-all solution, one-fit-all model. And I think also the Japanese government are somehow investing on such direction.
Yeah, I understand they have a massive R&D investment program, which they've just sort of begun last year, right?
Right, right. Yeah, Japanese government is started to invest on but once again, not well. If I remember correctly, there is one project about having Japanese language specific large language model, but mostly is an investment about kind of small but very domain specific solutions rather than
Right.
ultra large generalized problem.
Right. I understand. Thank you. And
Mhm.
Tato, let me ask you a question from the audience. They are asking the question, is there a difference in the kind of public excitement around AI in different countries as opposed to what investors are excited about? And also, is this somehow similar to the internet, boom 20 years ago? Or is this something different?
Yeah, there is a huge gap, I would say, between the excitement, the public excitement at the investment levels, investors, kind of how investors perceive it. And there is a recent study by MIT which says that like only 5% of all these AI projects reach to the production level. So which is quite low. It means that mainly what the companies are doing, they are of course experimenting and observing, but so far in terms of deployments, they failed. So this also underscores the two differences. First is that the question which I mentioned that our technology, current technology, the generative AI, which we have, is not strong enough so that we delegate all these tasks which companies have and the problems which companies want to solve. It still requires a text. It's mainly a text-based systems, right? And the text is a very, I would say, very tiny portion of the information in terms of the global information which we as humans acquire and perceive, right? So I would say this is problematic, and that was a kind of major issue which I underlined in my presentations. That yes, partially it's resolved the Hayekian problem, but there is some problems in terms of the technology still.
No, thank you. Well, I think we can end it there. That's a great question to be considering for everyone as they either start their day or, in my case, end the day. But first of all, I really want to thank all the panelists. You guys, spent your time preparing and also shared your expertise with us, and it was really wonderful to hear from the different regional backgrounds and the different dynamics. And also, I think we heard from the conceptual level down to the practical level. So I think we could keep talking quite a bit longer on this topic, and maybe we'll schedule something else in the future along these lines. And for those of you who are participating, I also want to thank you for joining us today. Really appreciate your time and listening to everything that the speakers had to say. We will have a recording out on the website. Also, I do encourage you to come to the website and take a look at some of the other articles and tools that we have if you're interested. So thank you very much for your attendance and your attention, and have a great day.
Thank
Take
you,
care now.
everyone. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
James. Tato
Thank you for
here.
having me.
Bye. Bye.
Such a great talk, Panel. Bye.